She was kicked off the Jimmy Kimmel show. A month later, she was standing next to Trump as the future vice president. Backstage, the noise still hadn't died down. The applause of the audience, the nervous stomp of the producers and the dull hum of the studio door closing. All this merged into a cacophony that did not bother Karoline Leavitt. She stood in the dressing room, as if trapped, with her hands clenched into fists. There is no anger on his face, but icy determination. She just got kicked out on live TV. Jimmy Kimmel, with a grin and snide jokes, interrupted the interview, ordered her to be removed from the stage. The reason? She dared to say that Donald Trump was the best president in the last 50 years. The door swung open abruptly, like a lash. Kimmel came in, still in his suit, but with his tie already unbuttoned. His face was flushed with emotion. "Are you serious, Karoline?" he hissed, not bothering to hide his annoyance. "Do you come to my show and turn it into a MAGA rally?" "What did you expect, Jimmy?" she replied coldly, turning to him. "That I'm going to sit and nod while you're slandering Republicans? I'm not Joe Biden to get lost in Three Pines." He snorted and slammed the door behind him, drowning out the sound of the cooler. "You're not even trying to have a dialogue. You're just reading slogans. Trump is great. Democrats are destroying the country. How much is possible?" "Because it's true," Karoline snapped. "But you don't want to hear the truth. You want your own little liberal comedy for apathetic viewers who laugh at every orange man. Because he is a threat to democracy." She took a step closer to him, her eyes shining. "He's a threat to you. Your ideology, your bubble." He reminded millions of Americans that the voice of the worker matters, not the Hollywood elite. Kimmel clenched his jaw. The silence in the dressing room was so thick that it could have been cut with a knife. "Do you think I'm afraid of people like him? What is it?" he whispered, almost softly, but anger was boiling in his voice. He was lying, manipulated, divided the country. "Do you think that the Democrats are white knights?" She chuckled. "You're just their mouthpiece. You call yourself a comedian, but in fact you are a propagandist in a jacket." But without humor. Kimmel exhaled, clenched his fists, but remained in place. "It's not over, Karoline. You crossed yourself out." "You're wrong," she replied. "This is just the beginning. And when America wakes up, you won't be joking." Kimmel leaned on the edge of the table, as if looking for support, but did not look away. There was no usual mockery in them. Just fatigue, and maybe a little fear. "Do you know what scares me?" He said it slowly. "The fact that you have an audience. People who seriously believe that democracy is evil. That journalists, comedians, and scientists are all just part of the deep state." Karoline crossed her arms, not blinking. "Maybe it's worth wondering why they believe this. Why millions no longer trust the news. Why does your audience laugh when you mock half the country, not because it's funny, but because they feel better about themselves than those hillbillies from Ohio?" "They're not hillbillies, Karoline. It's a crowd that's fueled by people like you. People who find it easier to blame migrants than to admit that their problems are caused by billionaires, including those you protect." "You caused the problem," she snapped. "Your laws, your taxes, your fake sweet agenda. You have destroyed the boundaries. You have made parents afraid for what their children are taught in schools. You are turning the country into a branch of some kind of liberal utopian camp, where even thinking otherwise is considered a crime." Kimmel recoiled, his face tense. "Do you really think that Trump is the solution? After all that happened?" Karoline came closer, her voice calmer, almost icy. "I think he was the only one who was not afraid to say out loud what millions were silent about. And you're afraid of him because he's not amenable to your agenda. He doesn't bow to Hollywood. And most importantly, he's going to the White House again. And you know it." Kimmel abruptly turned away and sat down in a chair. He looked broken, but instead of rage, a sarcastic grin. "Even so, you know what's funny? He won't save you. When everything falls apart, he will be the first to turn away. And you'll be alone." Karoline froze for a moment. And then she said softly, but with force, It is better to be alone in the truth than the darling of lies. Kimmel was silent. It was as if those words had struck something in him, not conviction, not faith, but a memory. It was as if he had heard someone else instead of Karoline. Perhaps it was himself, many years ago, when he was not yet part of the machinery of show business, but just a guy who wanted to speak his mind. He got up slowly, rubbed his face with the palm of his hand, and looked at Karoline without malice. "You don't understand how it works," he finally said. "Do you think there is freedom here? Is there independence? We're all in the same boat, Karoline. I'm with a microphone, you're with a Trump flag, but above us is the same system. And she decides who speaks and who doesn't." Karoline raised her eyebrows. "So you admit that you play by the rules that are dictated to you?" "I admit," he shrugged, "that sometimes you have to make sacrifices. To stay on the air. To avoid being cut out, cancelled, or buried." She took a step towards the door. "Then you won't understand me. Because I'm not afraid of anything. They've already tried to cancel me. More than once. But I'm telling the truth, and they're listening to me for it. And you know what? I don't need your show. Your lighting. I'll be back, but not here, and to a place where I won't be interrupted because of an opinion." Kimmel nodded, as if accepting her challenge. "You'll be back. Just don't think that a microphone will make you untouchable. This country has already split once. The second time may be the last." Karoline opened the door. Before leaving, she threw over her shoulder. "This country is not split because of Trump. And because of people like you, who call patriotism fascism, tradition a threat, and freedom of speech extremism. You started it. We're just not going to be silent anymore." The door slammed shut, and Jimmy Kimmel was left in the dressing room, alone, with his shoulders slumped, and a reflection in the mirror opposite that he did not recognize. He sat in silence. There was silence for a few seconds, then I could hear someone slapping a folder behind the wall, a coffee machine turning on, and someone laughing. Everything kept moving, but something froze inside Kimmel. He stared at his reflection, tired eyes, nasolabial folds deeper than yesterday. He was increasingly wondering, when did jokes stop being funny? When did the evening show become a hate-fueling playground? He picked up his phone, opened Twitter. Carolina has already started streaming. Thousands of viewers. The inscription on the screen reads, "Censorship lives in Hollywood." And I saw it with my own eyes. "Of course," he murmured. "Of course you did." He put down his phone, but the screen remained lit up. Dozens of comments, including those with his name. "Kimmel is afraid of the truth. He's just a mouthpiece for the Democrats. The liberal machine is collapsing, and he feels it." He closed his eyes. Somewhere deep in the subconscious, the producer's voice sounded, "Don't call them. They turn the ether into chaos. We're losing sponsors." But he insisted then. I wanted a heated conversation. He wanted a spectacle, and I got it. On the other side of Los Angeles, Karoline was sitting in a car. The light from the phone illuminated the salon, and her voice was confident and calm. "You know, when you're sitting in front of a man who swears by freedom and democracy, but turns off the microphone first, you know. The game is over. They don't want to talk. They want submission, and I'm not the one who bends down." There are lights, flags, and hearts in the comments. She read them with one eye, but something else was bubbling inside, not anger, not resentment. Passion. The adrenaline rush. Her voice was clear. "We are regaining our country. Voice by voice. Broadcast after broadcast. The shows are ending, but the movement is just beginning." She turned off the broadcast and stared out the window at Los Angeles at night. The flickering lights did not seem alien. It seemed like a challenge. And at that moment, she knew that everything was just beginning. The next morning, the country was already in full swing. The segments with the dressing room scandal, filmed by someone from the staff on the phone, were leaked online. In chunks, with bad sound, but clear enough to see that Karoline was not backing down. Kimmel was screaming, and no one knew which was worse. The moment of exile itself, or the way he lost his temper in a private conversation backstage. The conservative media picked up on everything in a matter of hours. Fox News, Newsmax, even some independent YouTube channels. Each posted a video with loud headlines. Karoline Leavitt defeated Jimmy Kimmel on his own territory. Censorship on TV. How the liberal star couldn't stand the truth. The dressing room became an arena. And the liberal lost. Carolina went outside this morning with a cup of coffee and a phone. Her name was trending. She opened her laptop, and her email was full of invitations. Talk shows, podcasts, interviews. Even people who had previously been silent now wrote to her. You did what everyone was afraid of. She told the truth to her face. Her assistant, Andrew, entered the hotel room with a tense face. You have a call. Trump, himself. In 2 minutes. Karoline looked up. The real Trump? Through his senior advisor. But yes, he wants to talk in person. She sat up straight, straightening her shoulders. Not from nerves, but from readiness. A moment later, the bell rang. She replied, Karoline? A familiar voice with a New York accent cut through the static. You made a story yesterday. I'm proud of you. She smiled faintly. Thank you, Mr. President. That clown, Kimmel, thinks he's won. And you're like a lion. We need such people. Are you ready for more? She didn't answer right away. I was looking out the window. Cars drove by, not knowing that her future was being decided right now. I'm ready, she said finally. I didn't come into this game to be a pawn. Fine, the voice replied. Because I have a plan. And you're a part of it. Over the next few weeks, Carolina disappeared from the field of view of the major liberal media. Not a single invitation from CNN. Not a single mention on MSNBC. But in a world where every politician can become their own media company, it wasn't a loss, it was a liberation. The New Hampshire office, which used to be the headquarters of her congressional campaign, has now become the nerve center of a new movement. Assistants, volunteers, and a digital team all work 16 hours a day. The slogan on the wall, hand-drawn with a felt-tip pen, read, You can't turn us off. Carolina was no longer just answering interviews, she was dictating them. On Rumble, Telegram, and his own podcast, which has racked up millions of listens, Unfiltered, Leavitt speaks. Every week, she debunked the hypocrisy of the Biden administration, pointed out the failures of the media, and promoted her idea. A new conservative wave, ready not to apologize, not to make excuses, but to win. And it was at this moment that she received a letter, encrypted, with the coat of arms, 45 office. 2 days later, she was sitting on a private jet. The destination is Mar-a-Lago. In the evening, in the library with gold frames and American flags, Donald Trump met her personally. He got up from the leather chair, shook her hand, and said, Caroline, do you know why you're here? I can guess, she replied calmly. He nodded and sat back down. I'm not just preparing for the elections. I'm raising an army, not politicians, soldier, people who are not afraid to be hated, who are not afraid of cameras, CNN and fact-checkers. He paused and looked straight into her eyes. You will become the face of the new strategy. Young, smart, and compromising. We'll take you to the national level. But you have to be ready for war. Caroline didn't blink. I was born for her. Trump laughed. That's what I understand. You won't just be the voice of the campaign. You will be her spearhead. He leaned closer. And if everything goes according to plan, you'll be the vice president. Back in New Hampshire, Caroline was no longer just a former congressman or a media figure. She returned as a future national player, with a direct order from Donald Trump himself. Meetings began immediately. The office's conference room has been converted into a command headquarters. In one room, political strategists were building a roadmap. Primary states, key districts, demographics, and the vulnerable points of Biden and Kamala Harris. In the other, the cybersecurity and social media team, it's TikTok, Instagram, X, formerly Twitter, and rumble were synchronized with the common core of the movement. Karoline talked every day now. On camera, live broadcast, from rallies, from parking lots, from cafes in Iowa. Every step she took was recorded, and every step she took was an attack. She couldn't hold back anymore. "Friends," she said, standing in front of a crowd in Ohio, "they want you to feel guilty for loving your country. I want you to apologize for the flag, for your family, and for your faith. But we won't crawl. We'll be going." The crowd burst into applause. Posters with her name, Leavitt 2028, although she hasn't even formally announced her candidacy. Journalists from Democratic publications tried to attack. Articles with headlines like, "Leavitt, young, evil and dangerous," or "Trump has found a female counterpart, and she is more aggressive." But Karoline responded to each attack the way Trump himself would have done, with a head-on punch. "These journalists confuse facts with feelings," she said in her podcast. "They're scared of a woman who doesn't cry from an editor's letter in The Atlantic. They're scared that I don't play by their gender rules. They don't want strong women, they want obedient ones." As Kimmel and the liberal media tried to silence her, her base grew. Partly because she sounded tough, but also because she wasn't pretending. And at Mar-a-Lago, in the shadow of flags and portraits, Trump watched her speeches with an expression of satisfaction. "Here she is," he told his assistants. "No fear, no filter. They will call her a monster, and she will win." While Karoline packed stadiums with Trump, earning millions of views and fierce support from supporters, Jimmy Kimmel suffered quietly in his own studio. It's been almost a month since their conflict. His ratings went down, not catastrophically, but noticeably. Especially in those segments where he used to make fun of the right. He felt that the audience was getting tired. That now that Karoline had more and more screen time, his silence looked like an admission of defeat. The producers asked, "Don't touch her. You gave her the platform yourself." They forgot and moved on. But Kimmel knew he couldn't forget. One evening, an hour before the broadcast, he locked himself in his office with his phone in his hand. He watched a short video from a rally in Texas. Karoline, in a jacket with an American flag, stood next to Trump. The crowd roared, and the inscription appeared on the screen. "The next vice president." Kimmel chuckled. Then he exhaled bitterly. "Really?" He threw at nothing. "Is it okay now?" That night, he changed the script of the show. I removed 2 musical numbers. I shortened the interview. And, standing in front of the camera, he opened the evening unexpectedly personally. "You know, I was taught that if you can't beat a lie, at least laugh at it. But sometimes the lie gets so big that the joke sounds powerless." He paused, then looked directly into the camera. "I'm talking about Karoline Leavitt. Yes, that one. Yes, I kicked her out. Yes, it was rude. But let's not pretend, she's not a heroine. She's a simulation. A mix of Trump and TikTok. And if she becomes vice president, we might deserve whatever happens to us." He finished the monologue heavily, without his usual grin. There was an awkward silence in the audience, and the applause broke out later, as if out of habit. That same night, Karoline saw the recording. Already backstage after the performance in Arizona, someone from the headquarters sent a link to the general chat. She reviewed the fragment twice. She smiled. "Is he saying that I'm a simulation?" She chuckled. "Great. Now imagine what it will be like when the simulation takes the oath." The assistant next to him laughed. And she was already typing a short post on her phone. "Jimmy, I know you're hurting. But don't worry, when I'm vice president, we'll keep you free to speak. Even if you don't believe in it yourself." Winking face #NoFilter. Jimmy Kimmel Live is on in 2 days. There was a new speech, dramatically different from the usual monologue. The camera smoothly zoomed in on Jimmy, and he, in a formal suit, without his usual crooked grin, began to speak slowly, clearly, as if measuring every word. "My name is Jimmy Kimmel, and I want to address Karoline Leavitt directly. Pause. The audience held its breath. You are not the first one who decided to build a career on scandal. I'm not the first person to think that volume is power. I've seen a lot of them. They appear, make noise, and disappear, because at one point they run out of lines. He got up from the table, which he rarely did. Do you want to be a vice president? Good. Then behave like a candidate, not like a TikTok influencer. I'm calling you. Live broadcast. An open dialogue. One-on-one. Without any hints. Without prompter. Without the Trump team behind the scenes. He stepped closer to the camera. I want the whole country to see who you really are. Not a fragment. Not installation. And you're real. Do you have the courage? Then come over. That same night, Twitter, X exploded. The hashtags hashtag Kimmel vs Leavitt, hashtag live debate, and hashtag face to face were trending. By morning, the New York Times and the Daily Wire were writing about the challenge. And by noon, Karoline had already written down the answer. The background was a flag. She was standing in front of the camera in a plain white shirt. Jimmy Kimmel. I don't need to pretend. I don't hide behind jokes when the country is on fire. Are you inviting me to a debate? With pleasure. But remember, you didn't call the victim. You called a soldier. She paused, then added with a slight grin. See you live. Try not to cry. A week later, Jimmy Kimmel live broadcast. On both sides of the stage are Karoline and Jimmy. Without teleprompters. Without scripts. The camera does not turn off. Hundreds of thousands of viewers at the screens. The broadcast is available on all platforms. The first question. Trump's economic policy. Karoline answers. Precisely, harshly, with numbers. The audience tries to boo her, but she doesn't get lost. The second question. Borders and immigration. Kimmel makes an attempt to move out as a joke. Karoline interrupts. You didn't call me here for a joke. You wanted the truth. Be patient. By the 15th minute, the audience is already applauding both of them, because the dialogue has become something that has not been for a long time. A real conflict of views, not a show for ratings. In the finale of the broadcast, Kimmel, wiping sweat from his forehead, admits, well, a survivor. It was tough, but you know what, Karoline? If you really become the vice president, I'll have to start respecting you. At least a little bit. She answers calmly but firmly. And you, Jimmy, just started doing journalism today. I hope you'll continue. A curtain. The gym is on its feet. Karoline Leavitt is not just a figure of scandal. Now her name is forever inscribed in political history. And Jimmy Kimmel realized that you can disagree with a person, but you can't ignore the force.